this real?
Does it feel real?
Our boys back home?
Our son. I'm always scared of something. Always running away. Do you remember?
It was a long time ago.
Yeah, I don't think that matters.
Maybe I didn't treat you quite as good as I should.
I've always felt like a stranger in my own family.
I want to tell a story about those things that we keep inside of us, that pain, I guess, that we can keep inside of us, often from childhood or, you know, early teen years, whatever it might be. And and whether that's grief, which in this story, it's both grief, it's also like, I would say, a trauma for this character of growing up gay in the 80s. And all of those things that so many of us keep within us and we try and ignore and we try and pretend it's not there anymore. But it always finds a way to leak and bleed to the surface.
Adam is a character who's in a sort of purgatory-like place, and he can't love himself. And so he conjures up these people that he lost when he was a little boy in order for them to see him totally. And it's hard for him to make them see him clearly, and it's rough. But he gets there in the hope that if they can see him as an adult for who he really is in its totality, then he might be able to, having been loved, learn how to love himself and to love this new, now another person into his life. And I think that's a really, really beautiful and kind of authentic message, because that's how love exists. If we don't get it, we don't get to love ourselves, then it's very difficult for us to properly love someone else in the true meaning of the word.
I think the film definitely is incredibly personal to Andrew Haigh, but it also, the first conversation that I had with him, if I remember correctly, was specifically about Harry, and I think that's one of the reasons why he's such a brilliant director. It's like he knows why he's making it and what he's making it for, but ultimately he knows that my job in it is to look after my little patch of land, and that land being Harry. So he was very keen to have a conversation about that rather than discussing about the kind of personal feeling behind the film. Yeah.
Drink. It's Japanese. It's meant to be the best in the world, but I couldn't tell you why. So.
Oh, thanks.
Okay, okay, how about I come in anyway? If not for a drink, then for whatever else you might want.
I think that's a good idea.
Don't scare you.
It's all right for there to feel like there is mystery to the story, and that it is mysterious and strange and unusual, but not too surreal at the same time. And if I'm trying to explore essentially the nature of love, let's say, which I think is what I'm trying to actually really dig into, familial love, romantic love, how they're interconnected, all those kind of things, there is such a mystery to that I wanted the film to feel like that. Feel like a dream in some regards, and you know, when you wake up from a dream, you're like, what have I just watched? I know I'm being told something that I feel like is meaning something to me, but I can't necessarily piece together every single element of it.
What was important, what Andrew Haigh wanted, I think, from all the performers in this movie was an ability to love outwardly and openly. And that was so easy when you're working with Andrew Scott. It just is. Andrew was playing a character who was straddling adulthood and the infantilism that he still has. So a lot of that is he's somehow managed to physicalize in his performance. And that physicalization was so surprising to me, because I'm obviously not thinking about what he's going through. When you're performing it, you're kind of you're reactionary. And that's what's so unique about working with talented, really talented people, is that they surprise you.
So you're going to be over the moon to see you. Guess what I found loitering in the park?
Is it him?
Oh yeah, it's definitely him. Look in his eyes.
Yes, it is you.
Hi.
Hi. Don't just stand there. Get yourself inside.
Well, what was so wonderful was that I got to spend the first part of our shoot with Jamie and Claire, and we did all those scenes. So it was like having a childhood and kind of growing up with them and almost letting them go, and they went off. And then and that was a very difficult time. It was a very vulnerable, it was upsetting, and it was hard work. And so then to be able to go into that section with Paul, where you're playing, for the most part, you know, the idea of falling in love and connecting with somebody and embracing that sort of emotional and physical ecstasy that he feels, that we all feel when we fall in love with somebody. That was pretty wonderful. And Paul was just the most wonderful colleague in that sense. We didn't have to talk too much about how they connected with each other, because I think there's something that we both really understood about the screenplay and the characters within the screenplay. And I think when you've got a screenplay that really works, everybody wants to be there, and it doesn't require too much talking. If you've got really great actors, you just want to get on and do that.
The film is about Adam re-examining his relationship to his sexuality and the fact that Harry represents a safe place to do that. Talk goes out the window. It becomes about physical communication, and you learn a lot about the characters through that in a subtle way. And what I like about it is that it kind of works at an audience kind of subconsciously. You see these people falling in love first truly through sex. Like, it's a very kind of sex-forward relationship that it begins with, and you kind of start there, and it kind of falls into these long conversations that you would only feel comfortable having if you feel comfortable with the other human being. And that relationship is built through sex for Adam and Harry.
I'm assuming you're not with anyone. Never see you with anyone. Does your mum and dad?
Yeah. They died just before I was 12.
I think when you're a kid, you sort of feel like your parents should be grown up. And then you realise sometimes when you look back, you're like, God, my parents were 30 when they were going through this, 35. I was a mess when I was 35. It's amazing that anybody can get through that. So I think I wanted to be I wanted to be compassionate to all people within this story, to both the parents and the child and the lovers and all of those things, and sort of just say a little bit like, it's pretty tricky for everybody in this story, and you sort of have to do the best you can.
He's managed to craft what I think all filmmakers are looking for, which is signature. You know that this is an Andrew Haigh film because he has a complete authority of emotion.
It feels like it's coming from a place within him that only he could make, you know? But I really don't remember getting into the specifics of that with him, because he wears that quite lightly. And I think, not that that's not an important thing, but I think it could potentially reduce the film if we were talking about it just as a personal exercise, because it's not that. It is many, many things. Or the main thing to me was that I am a huge fan of his work, and he's an auteur, and he is an extraordinary filmmaker.
And it's really interesting, you know, thinking about the word emotional. And I think we associate when we feel emotional that it's sad necessarily all the time. But there are so many things within the film, and I think that's why it's so special, is that there's so much hope in there. I think it's a really redemptive story for Adam. I think he learns something, and I think his future is altered because of of the pain that he goes through. It's about falling in love. It's about that deep connection, about that physical joy that he eventually receives, and the connection that he has with his parents. So that's what I think is at the center of the film, is that, you know, we all go through terrible times. It's a finite amount of time that we have on the planet. And so confronting those things, as hard as it is, it's worth it.
It's kind of incredible when I go to screenings, and I can see that it is like affecting people and affecting them in different ways, and they can come out of that cinema and feel like they can be open with me actually about their lives. And I don't take that lightly. I watch films to connect with people, essentially, and you want your film to connect with people. So yeah, it feels special.